The city's sex industry has also seen quite the damage in the pandemic. Strip clubs have now closed twice in the last 7 months because of concerns over the risk of spreading COVID. But those in the sex industry say they feel unfairly targeted by the government officials and say without the supports many other industries are receiving, these workers are being left in dire financial situation. After just getting back on track, strip clubs were ordered to close once again. A hit to those in the sex industry and measures advocates are calling unfair.
At Maggie's, our position is that strip clubs need to close down, just as bars and restaurants and casinos that reopen this week also need to be shut down. And what we're seeing from political leaders in the city of Toronto is a very specific targeting of sex workers and a targeting of strip clubs in the same way that other industries just aren't experiencing.
Just last week, the provincial government had ordered all strip clubs to close. The decision came after outbreaks were reported at 2 clubs in Toronto in as many months. Sex workers say the government is further criminalizing the work they do by not shutting down bars and restaurants as well, instead just rolling back hours of operations.
2 blocks away from the Brass Whale, El Furniture Warehouse, it's a restaurant, exposed 1,700 people to COVID-19. That's a greater exposure rate than every single strip club in the city of Toronto combined.
But what has hit this industry the hardest is the lack of support for its workers.
The biggest impact, aside from like the physical distancing, which obviously impacts how sex work is able to happen, a lot of people in these industries are out of work now and they're not able to access emergency benefits, and that can have really dire outcomes for people.
While some workers were covered under the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, many others were not. The pandemic has also highlighted issues sex workers face, many afraid to access government help due to stigma, along with fewer avenues for support. In terms of keeping strip clubs safe and COVID-free, Addaker says sex workers were never consulted by government officials, and if they had been, perhaps outbreaks could have been prevented.
So there were a lot of issues with how contact tracing, for example, clubs would have people come in and write their information down on a binder, just name and phone number. Surprise, surprise, we're not able to locate hundreds of people that have been in these spaces. And had we been thinking about scanning IDs, for example, or corroborating information that was being put down there, we might not have had those issues.
Maggie's Toronto, which is an advocacy and support group run by sex workers, has fundraised over $130,000 to help provide support to those left without work in the sex industry.